Welcome to the Art Project. We are going to talk about composition. So if you've got a piece of notebook paper and a pencil or a sketchbook, take some notes. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please subscribe. And if you think of anything I left out, please tell me in the comments down below. So there's three major things that you need to deal with when you deal with composition. One is focal point. The second is structure, and the third is balance. We're going to talk about focal point for a few minutes here. There are several ways to show focal point, which is the emphasis of your work of art. So I use those words interchangeably, the focal point or the emphasis. In this case, I've got two dots. I'm going to kind of subdue one with a little bit of ink, and you'll notice that the high contrast white and black one on the right stands out as your emphasis. Color also helps. These 5 dots all look the same, but I made one of them yellow so it grabs your attention. Sorry this is not in the frame correctly, but when you have focus, that draws your attention more than a blurry area. Another way is motion. Your eye is drawn to anything that you would recognize as having motion, and an arrow is something that kind of creates motion in our mind. Another way to create an emphasis is with faces and figures. The human brain is almost automatically attracted to faces. The human brain recognizes faces and recognizes figures. If you've ever been driving down the street and looking at the clouds and you see faces in the clouds, that's why, because the brain is attracted to faces. So that's one way of creating a focal point or an emphasis, is with a face. Another way is guiding lines. I have 3 houses that are all pretty much the same, but a pathway leads you to one of them, and that creates a focal point or an emphasis on the 3rd house on the right. Another way to do this is framing. I have 2 dots that are pretty much the same, 2 little squares, but if I frame them up, that creates an emphasis for that one on the left. This is a square. It's kind of hard to see, but geometry stands out in our minds. The second level is structure. If you will set up your composition around some sort of a rule, that will help create a really good composition. And it can be any rule. In this case, I'm doing the rule of thirds. Most cameras come with the rule of thirds kind of like built in. You see the little grid all the time. The yellow is right there on that little crosshair. Another good one is the golden ratio. Way too much to go over, so you'll have to Google that. The triangle is a famous one that a lot of artists have used. Another structural trick would be symmetry. There's the golden rule, there's the rule of thirds, and then there's symmetry. If you do the same thing on the left as you do on the right, and you kind of like keep it centered, then that adds a lot of emphasis to the middle, and that's a structural method. And then full frame. So I'm basically just filling the entire frame, my entire canvas, with this apple that I'm drawing here. That's a structural rule. Just fill the frame with your image. And then the last component of composition is balance. And there are different ways to secure balance. Balance is basically the visual weight of the elements. Here are some things that you can do to create visual weight. So I've got a guy here on the left. It's kind of heavy on the left until I add this large sphere on the right, and that balances it out. Another one is high contrast. Your eye is drawn to the area with the most contrast. So I'm going to create a real blurry kind of area. I'm going to create this dark corner, and your brain first is drawn to the bottom right because it's nice and dark. But I'm going to add a high contrast white dot, and then it sort of balances out the composition. Got a high contrast white dot on the left and the black area on the right. Another one is color. Color has a lot of visual weight to it. If you're in a dark room and all of a sudden a bright, colorful light comes on, and there you go. So I've got an image here on the right, just kind of a sphere that I drew, but I'm going to add a couple of blue pieces of tape, and that creates balance in this picture. And then last but not least is faces and figures. We discussed this a few minutes ago. Faces and figures always draw your attention. So if you have a heavy area, like I do this little dot on the right, but you then see a face on the left, there's some balance to this. So you can use these different things like faces and size to create balance in your picture. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. You need to go and experiment with it, or it's not going to make any sense to you. Until next time, keep arting.